Welcome to the Events Podcast, where we talk each week with event professionals about how they plan, promote, and run their events. Whether you're running small meetups or large conferences, exhibitions, and concerts, we focus on finding tips that you can use straight away. The podcast is sponsored by EventsFrame, that's our ticketing system. We developed the system after running 300 plus events a year with my company Apps Events, and we had an endless search for an amazing ticketing system. We've tried everything, and we've designed EventsFrame to be super easy to use with the best discounts there. So please give it a go. It's got a flat, low fee, and we guarantee you're going to love it. If you email me at dan@eventsframe.com with the subject line podcast, I'm going to give you a special discount code. So on to today's interview. This interview was a really, really good one. It was with a guy called Johnny FD, and he's something of a superstar in the digital nomad community. He's based in Chiang Mai, although he travels a lot. He runs two really cool podcasts, Travel Like a Boss and Invest Like a Boss. He likes the phrase like a boss, as you can tell. I love Invest Like a Boss. It's him and a guy called Sam Marks, where they talk about how they invest their money. And Johnny's interesting because he's a really open guy. He shares how much money he makes and everything online. And he's launched the Nomad Summit, and that's a conference originally and still in Chiang Mai, but he also runs a Las Vegas version, and he gets digital nomads from around the world to come to this event. It's amazing. He's grown it really quickly as well to 400 plus people. So he gives a lot of tips about how he grew it, how he grew his audience through podcasting and social media, how he ran the first event. I think you're going to get a lot out of it. So I'd love to pass you on now to the interview with Johnny FD. Hello and welcome to the Events Podcast. Today I'm really, really delighted to be talking to Johnny FD. He's a guy I've been following online for quite a while. He's something of a kingpin in the digital nomad scene. He's pretty well known. He's got a lot of YouTube content. Really, really open guy in terms of he shares everything, including what he's earning and where he is. And he's running a couple of really big events in Vegas and Chiang Mai. So I want to get into his background and talk a bit about the event. So welcome, Johnny.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. I appreciate you having me on the show.
Cool, man. So, John, I mean, just in case people don't know who you are, could you talk a bit about your background? Because it's pretty interesting how you sort of came to be a digital nomad and doing this kind of, what was what was sort of how it started?
Yeah, it was completely by accident. In 2008, I was living in California. I grew up there, and I went to Thailand on a trip. I read the 4-Hour Work Week, fell in love with scuba diving. That was my first time doing it, and just decided to quit my corporate job, move to Thailand, and basically, just live at least the first part of the 4-Hour Work Week, just living cheaply.
It's amazing.
It wasn't until, yeah.
The 4-Hour Work Week is like, for me, it's the one book that changed my life completely. And I think so many people we probably both know, it's like the one book that has had an effect on my life, even though, you can't really follow the steps in it, but I think it inspires you to do certain things.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely one of those books where if you take action on it, it can change your life. And it definitely has mine. Unfortunately, I didn't think I can ever own a business or make money, owning a business while traveling. So I freelanced. When I first came, I was working as a dive master, basically an underwater guide. Did that for 4 years. Ended up writing a book about it. And that's how I got into online business and how I discovered other digital nomads. And back then we didn't even call ourselves that. We called ourselves location independent entrepreneurs, which is really hard to write. Yeah.
It's funny you became a dive guide. I used to be a snowboard instructor, and it's a similar kind of job. It's like you want to hang out in a cool place, and that's like the coolest job in the place, really. You get to meet people. You're doing a sporting activity, and it's a good first step to go somewhere.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And this was 2008 to 2013, and it wasn't until then that I really started meeting other people who actually earned a living online, were able to travel. And it was really hard to get information. It was really hard to meet people. It was really difficult to really connect. And I guess luckily I had found the Dynamite Circle, and I know you had someone from the DC on recently, right?
Yeah, that's right. Catalina, who she actually runs the conferences for Dan and Ian now. So it was really good to talk to her. Yeah.
Yeah. So back then in 2013, it was even more underground. It was pretty small, and I would basically go to their meetups because it was the only entrepreneur meetup that I can find in Chiang Mai at the time. And there maybe it would be 8 people, maybe 10. And it was great, but it was it was kind of a closed community. It wasn't designed for newbies. You had to have a business already. You had to pay a pretty hefty, monthly membership. It wasn't until I don't even remember who put it on, but somebody finally decided to just say, hey, let's all meet at this one bar. It was the first time there was, 30, 40, people, in one place. And it was amazing. And the only problem with it was that it was loud. There was rock music playing.
Yeah.
It was dark and there was tons of alcohol flowing. So it was amazing to finally meet, 40 plus other like-minded people who were working online while traveling. But it was just really hard to network or talk about anything important. And I remember, having a couple drinks and just thinking, how amazing would it be if we had this same meetup, but instead of at a loud bar with loud music, somebody should just rent a conference room and we should just learn from each other.
Yeah, that's a great way to start. Yeah.
Yeah, well, nobody else thought that at the time. I remember saying this idea to a few people, and I think that at least the first 4 people said, no, it was a bad idea. Or they're like, yeah, nobody's, who are going to get to pay for the room? It's expensive. I'm sure it's hard. Now this, these casual meetups are better. People like having drinks. This is easier. But I was in my mind, I was already so dead set on doing this. Just kept asking people until one person finally said, yeah, that's a good idea. And I went ahead and did it.
It's interesting because I think earlier in my entrepreneurial career, if when I was in that same situation you were in, I came up with an idea, I'll ask 5 people and they all said it was a terrible idea. I would just abandon it. Now I'm like, it's probably a good idea. I mean, that's the way my mind works because I'm thinking, well, most people don't want to do this, which means there's a higher barrier to entry, so it could be a good idea. It's funny how you sort of change over the years.
Yeah, that's actually really good advice. Where if it's something that deep down, in your heart that it'll benefit people, it's something that isn't being done now, but it would help. It'd be helpful. But the excuses people had were, that's too much effort, or it's going to be too expensive, or it's going to be too difficult. That's kind of that big light bulb moment of, yeah, that's great. That's why it hasn't been done yet, but there's value in it.
That's cool. So you had to meet up with 40, 50 people. You had a light bulb to rent a venue. What was the next steps? I guess obviously you're pretty busy at the time. I guess, and we've kind of skipped some stuff, but I know you were doing a lot of drop shipping and stuff. So you had kind of a fairly big ongoing business at this point. Plus you were blogging and vlogging and everything. Yeah.
So I've always blogged my whole life, about random topics. Most of those blogs, I let them lapse because, I was too cheap to pay the $10 a year to keep them going. But it's just been my way of kind of just sharing knowledge. I went through my whole life really just unsure about how to do anything. My parents are immigrants. They barely spoke English. So they were never able to teach me, anything about business, about dating, about, diet or lifestyle. So whatever it was, I had to figure it out myself. And because it was so difficult to find good information, I would want to share it afterwards. And that's why I blogged pretty much, before blogging was even a thing. I used to have a Zanga page, which is a company that now shut down.
Okay.
Yeah. So at the time, I was running a dropshipping business, and I was making decent money. I was making, I think, maybe $3,000 or $4,000 a month.
Yeah.
While living in China, in Chiang Mai, it's really good.
Yeah. You can live pretty well on like $1,000. Well, you can live a good life on $1,000 a month, pretty much. It seems in Chiang Mai.
Yeah, and actually, maybe then it was a little bit less, but I was making at least $2,000 a month, and it was enough where I can afford to take a risk. I didn't want to take too big of a risk, so I shopped around and I looked for the cheapest seminar room I can find.
Yeah.
I couldn't afford a super nice hotel, but I can afford a mid-range hotel that had space that was going to be kind of empty anyways. And I remember just negotiating with them. And, normally when you rent a seminar package, they want a guaranteed number of people. They want to include, 2 coffee breaks and lunch, things like flip charts and projectors and all that. And I remember saying to them, I don't know how many people are going to come. Hopefully we'll have 50 people, but maybe we can shoot for 100. And I said, well, I don't think we can afford lunch. Could we just have water? And I was just really just trying to bootstrap it. And I remember they had me put down $1,000 deposit under, my personal credit card. And I was thinking, oh my God, like, what if I just lost out on this money, And, I had just started out. So it was still, pretty sizable amount of money for me. And I just announced and said, hey, you guys, I rented a conference room. We're going to have this event. Who wants to speak and who wants to attend?
Now, at this point, let's take a look at the situation. What kind of list did you have, like, from your blog and stuff? How many, like, did you have a decent sized email list, or was it just like a local Facebook group of people in Chiang Mai? What was your kind of network at this point?
I mean, I definitely had my blog followers, but most of them didn't live in Chiang Mai. Most of them lived somewhere else in the world, and they were just kind of following along to see how I was doing. And, and the more I think about it, I think at the time I was really just starting out. I just started making money. So I relied on local Facebook groups. And I think at the time, there was no digital nomad Facebook group in Chiang Mai.
Wow.
And I don't know why none of us thought of it. It didn't come until about a year later when my buddy Dan, this guy I met, he had just moved to Chiang Mai, and he was astonished. He said, why is there no group? And all of us kind of shrugged our shoulders and said, I don't know. And he said, okay, I'll make one. And now that group has like 13,000 people in it.
Wow.
And it just came from us chatting about it, and he was smart enough to pull the trigger.
Great. So you booked a room. I mean, obviously, this is a thing with conference venues, I mean, obviously you always have to minimize the risk. I mean, I know if people ask me for advice, I normally say, if you can get away with it in your first year of an event, try to use something free, either a co-working space, or there's a lot of options, or something where you've got less risk. A hotel, though, is always the coolest place. People like to come to a hotel, and it's just a case of, normally they have a delegate day rate, so like $50 a person a day or something, and that's the thing you've got to get over is like, it's limiting your downside. And it sounds like you did that. You got them to be pretty flexible on skipping lunch and giving you more flexibility than you normally get.
Yeah, I actually remember putting up the event, and I used Eventbrite at the time.
Yep.
I no longer use them because their per transaction fees are so high, and there's better platforms out there. Now I use Ticketailor.
Yep.
But at the time, I basically set a donation ticket. I said, I don't know what this is worth. I don't know what you're willing to pay, but if you can try to donate $25 or more, that'll help us cover the cost of the room.
Do you remember what the cost of a room was? Do you remember what the total cost was to book it?
Oh, I want to try to remember what it ended up being. I want to say, I think it was somewhere between $600 to $1,000 or something that first year.
Yep.
But that was just for the room rental. What we ended up doing was I set basically categories. I said, okay, if we can get up to $500, then we can have a projector or something. Uh-huh. And I think if we can get to $700, we can have coffee. And then if we can get to $1,000, we can include lunch.
And did you tell people this is what you were doing?
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. So you were totally open.
Yeah.
This is your philosophy in general, isn't it? Just being totally open.
Yeah.
About it.
I've always been super transparent about everything. And, it's been so long now. It's been 5 years since that first event. But I remember just around 100 people showed up. We ended up having coffee. I don't think lunch was included that first year just because we didn't have the budget for it. But we broke even. We were able to have the projector and the mic and everything. So it was like a decent setup. And I think everybody was really happy just to have it. But it definitely wasn't a luxury event, and definitely wasn't a money making event.
Right. And so how did you promote the event, apart from, obviously you've got a blog and you put this on I imagine on the Chiang Mai Facebook group, and any other things you did to promote your first event?
No, I don't think there was a Facebook group back then.
Oh, right. This is pre-Facebook, right?
Yeah, maybe there was, but it was hard. It was local word of mouth. I definitely posted on Facebook somewhere. I don't remember specifically if the group was active back then.
Yeah.
Or if it was just starting out. So it wasn't easy, but at the same time, it was, because there's nothing like it happening.
Yeah. You had a first mover advantage. You were early. So how many people, how did it end up? How many people came to the first event?
Just around 100 people came, and I made the fatal mistake of, and it wasn't even selling 100 tickets, because a lot of them were kind of just earmarked tickets, in hopes that people would give a donation at the door. I made a huge mistake, and I basically said we're sold out, because we had 100 people who RSVP'd, not realizing that, especially for something that people don't pay for money for upfront, but really for any event, there's always going to be 10% of the people who just can't make it. They end up, having to work, or they get sick, or they have something other to do, they forget about it, or they're out of town. That morning of, when we realized we had all these seats still open, made an announcement. Yeah, and I do think Facebook was around then, because I think that's where I posted it.
Yep.
Is just say, hey, we have 10 seats open, first comes first serves, and I think 10 people showed up.
It's interesting. I wrote a blog post about this, how to get people to come to your free events. Because I run over 300 events a year, and it's like, if you do a free event, it's exponentially different how many people won't turn up. For me, I'd say it's anywhere between 10 and even the worst case was probably 30% of people didn't turn up for a completely free event. For a paid event, very small. Always under 10%. Maybe even less than 5 typically. It's just so much worse with free events. I always say to people, even if you charge a small amount, people will come. It's a strange psychology. If you paid $10, you'll still, I've paid $10. I might as well at least go and check it out for an hour or two. It's funny with that how many people don't turn up when it's free.
Yeah, definitely. And I think after that first year, we started selling tickets in advance. We knew what the value was of the event. We knew that if we can charge a reasonable amount, we can start including things like lunch. We can rent a bigger conference room. The first year we had really low ceilings. I remember looking at photos of it, and even people while they're sitting down, it looked like we had low ceilings. So
how were you like MC yourself? How did you structure the day?
What I've always liked about the Nomad Summit is our tagline from the beginning has been for digital nomads by digital nomads. And, regardless if you're a location independent entrepreneur, if you're a remote worker, freelancer, really just, anyone who lives this lifestyle, wants to live this lifestyle, participates. So from day one, our staff has always been volunteer.
Yep.
It's never been profit driven. Actually, most of our events always kind of basically broke even. Right. And even the ones that eventually had money left over, that went straight to the deposit for the next year. So it's never been a big profit business. I would love for it to be in the future. I would love, to get to, Tony Robbins level and have that be my full-time job. But even if it never does, it's always been something that I really enjoy doing. People love attending it, and it's definitely opened a lot of other doors, like opportunity-wise or business-wise, just from the connections I've made.
Sure. There's an interesting psychology in events I've noted a lot where, like, And for you, I completely believe you, because you're the most transparent guy in the world when you say, it's you haven't made much money, you've reinvested it. But it's interesting. I know people making a lot of money from events. You should check out. I did an interview a couple of weeks ago with a broker, and he only brokers the sale of events businesses, which go for millions, multi-million dollars. People are terrified to say they make money from events, because they think that people are not going to want to come. I don't see it like that. I think you can have a community event that's fun and you can still make a profit out of it. But definitely, people don't want to say that. It's strange.
Well, also at the end of the day, I think if we're always kind of pandering to the people who want everything to be free, those are people who normally have very negative mindsets that you don't really want to attract anyways. And it's funny because we've held back the prices for so long. So the first year it was donation based, and we were just trying to get $25 from people, which was really nothing, And then the next year, I think we started tickets at, them at $49 or something, and then it slowly went up. And the third year, $79 tickets up to $99. And then last year was our first year we broke $100. A full day event that includes lunch, 2 snack breaks, coffee, like great presentations. But it was so hard getting over that hump because I knew that the event is worth so much more. And not only, in my mind, but people that attended would always comment, I can't believe how cheap it was. It was, such good value, but it was still so hard as an organizer to ask for more money. Yeah. And this is the first year where we started pre-sale tickets at or above $100. Wow. And now it's a 3-day event. And it's almost honestly ridiculous to have that fear, but it's there. I think a lot of people are really, really scared of charging what something is worth, even though the people that come are more than happy to pay it.
That's true. So I'd love to finish off the first event. So did you, you emceed it, you got some great community people to speak. I guess did you do some kind of social party, or did you do parties before and after? Because it's always a big part of an event is to have the social side of it. How did you structure that?
So the first year there was none of that. It was just the event.
And did people self-organize and head to a pub or something?
A little bit. I mean, I would say, the first year, it was such a small community anyways that everyone afterwards like, hey, you want to have dinner? And just people kind of just did their own thing. The next year, we had a pool party the next day, which we thought would be like a fun addition. And then the next year we added an after party and a pool party. And then starting last year, we started adding a pre-registration day just because it got so out of hand. Last year we had 400 people attend, and trying to check all of them in the morning would have been impossible.
Yeah.
So did a lot of networking, basically like a networking mixer the day before. Then we had the main conference day. Then we had the after party. Then the next day a pool party, and then we just started experimenting with workshops as well the day after. So now it's actually Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. It's a 4-day event now.
It's interesting. It depends on your audience, doesn't it? Because with the digital, I mean, I'm kind of dipping in and out of the digital nomad scenes. I live in Prague. Recently had a baby, so I don't travel as much. Although we're actually taking the 4-month-old baby to Taiwan next month, so that's going to be an interesting experience. I always traveled a lot. I always spent up to half of the year traveling. So I was always fascinated by the digital nomad scene because, as someone who was kind of on the fringes of it. But I think that kind of crowd have a lot more flexibility to stay for a longer event because they tend to base themselves in Chiang Mai for whatever, 2 months, 3 months, 6 months. And they've got a much more flexible schedule. So they'll hang around for I've noticed it with Dynamite Circle, people will hang around for a month doing things,
Yeah. And actually this time we're making it even longer where, we're encouraging everyone to stay for those 4 days, but then to just relax in Chiang Mai for a week. Either do some work, to hang out, do activities. And then the Friday after, so the next, basically a week after the event, we're going to do a reunion down on one of the Thai islands.
That's cool.
And the reason why, the inspiration for it was I was a speaker on the Nomad cruise, which is a great event put on by a guy named Johannes last year. The cruise ended in Athens, but he had the great idea of having a reunion down on the Santorini Islands, 5 days later. And it was just really nice. It was just like a nice way for people to encourage people to stay in Athens longer instead of just going home, and then to see one of the really beautiful islands, and just meet up again.
Yeah, the Nomad crew, just as a side point, I'd love to chat to him actually, but it's interesting because from what I understand, cruise ships, they obviously have to get out and back to the place where the cruise starts. So you can book the cruise ship very cheaply to go there, and he kind of got these cheap deals. Where normally the ship would be empty and made a Nomad cruise. Is that right, of digital nomads?
Yeah, exactly. So really smart event. And actually that's another example of not listening to people when they say it's a bad idea, because even me, I thought it was a terrible idea when he first started it. Yeah. Because it's a bunch of digital nomads, people who work online, going on a ship for 12 days without usable internet.
Yeah.
And I was like, are you joking? This is the worst idea I've ever heard in my life.
Yeah, but it's actually the best idea because they probably actually going to speak to each other.
Yeah, so it ended up being great. I mean, first off, they kind of figured out a little bit of the Wi-Fi situation. It's still not good, but it's, people kind of figured out ways around it. But if anything, it's just a nice way to unplug for 12 days and learn from each other, do offline activities. People still work if they need to, but it ended up being a really great event. I would say it's one of the best run events I've been to.
Cool. So let's jump back into your story. You've done year one. What was the sort of transition to grow this? Were you thinking it's going to be an annual event? And I'd like to get into how you started doing the Vegas event and how you grew the whole thing generally. Because 5 years is good. You've stuck with it. It's an established event. It's not some things come and go, but you've obviously clearly stuck with this as a regular event.
Yeah. So right away, I thought we should definitely have it be an annual event. I love having it in Chiang Mai. That's where it was born. That's kind of the mecca for digital nomads around the world. It's a great excuse for people to come to Chiang Mai, especially in January, which is high season. We used to have it in February, kind of with the end of February, which is actually a better time because it's less busy then. But the problem is in March, or starting kind of end of February or March, there's something called the burning season where the weather gets bad, the air quality gets really bad. And the problem was a lot of people would freak out and they would start leaving early. People would start leaving, a month before just because, they're thinking like where I should go next. and it was hurting ticket sales just because, people are like, oh, I really want to go, but everyone was leaving now for Saigon or something. So we were forced to move the event up by a whole month. Now it's like in peak, high season for nomads, but also for tourists. It's grown. Basically, the first year we had 100 people. The next year we had 200 or maybe 250. The next year we had 300 something. And then last year was our biggest year at 400. I knew it was a good trajectory of growing, but at the same time, I knew one of the things holding us back, that a whole year passes between events and, people kind of lose the momentum. People kind of forget about it. It's hard to sell tickets for an event that's a year later, especially to the Nomad crowd where they don't really know where they're going to be.
Yeah.
And that's when we decided to do a kind of a mid-annual event somewhere else in the world. And we chose Las Vegas.
Yeah, which is the conference center of the world pretty much. Now, I'm curious about Vegas because I've never run an event there, but I know a lot of people who have. I know Rob and Mike very, very well from MicroConf and stuff. And everyone says it's a completely different animal in Vegas dealing with the hotels in terms of they charge you for everything. It's unionized, it's rigid. There's very little room for negotiation. I'm not sure if that was your experience or not.
Yeah, it's really annoying. Chiang Mai, really easy here. Depends on the hotel as well, but you basically you meet with them. They take you to lunch, and you tell them what you need. They negotiate. They kind of make a good deal for you. Everybody's happy. It's win-win. In Vegas, you have to go through this like request for proposal process. You have to fill all these forms. You have to send things back and forth. And then, first, it's way more expensive. But second, it's hard to get the things you want, even like really simple things. Like I expect when I rent a seminar room to have a basic projector setup, a mic for presenter, like electricity, Wi-Fi. And none of that is included. And, you say, okay, well, can we have, and I would get angry. I would say like, look, I told you what we need. We're doing PowerPoint presentations. Of course we need a screen. Like, yeah, of course we need a projector for that screen. Yes, of course we need electricity for that projector for that screen. Yeah. And they would just start tacking things on. And the very worst is that the fact that everything is unionized. Yeah. I know unions originally had a good idea, so people can be treated fairly. And I think in a lot of other countries, unions are kind of a win-win for everyone. Sure. But in the US, unions are just greedy, and it's bad for everyone because they're losing business for people. They're kind of just this mob-run greedy business where, if it wasn't for politicians lobbying and, unions having power, they wouldn't exist. And I purposely went through tons of hotels, and every time, they would say, no, we have to use this union company for the audio visual. I would say no, like I'm gonna go with someone else. I'm gonna find someone who has an in-house staff. And luckily, I finally found one venue that had an in-house staff. I don't know how they got around it, but I just refused to deal with, these crappy union extortionists.
It's funny. I know I was at Education Technology, a big trade show in Philadelphia. They've got a huge convention center there. And I was talking to a friend of mine who was exhibiting. And I remember there, you couldn't even unplug something if you were exhibiting, you had a stand. You couldn't unplug something. And someone did. And the union shut the stand down. They said, no, you have to call the union representative to unplug anything. Like you couldn't touch the socket to plug your phone charger in or anything. It's crazy. Yeah,
it really is ridiculous. And it's unfortunate because I think, they kind of have people by the balls. So people have to do it, especially if you want your event in Vegas. Luckily, we are kind of worldwide. We can move the event wherever we want. I just like Vegas because people can fly there easily. It's somewhere people want to go anyways. There's a lot of hotels. It's relatively cheap.
It's a cool experience, especially if I love Vegas for like 2 or 3 days. Then I have to get out of town, but it's a great place to spend a few days for sure.
Yeah, definitely agree. So we're probably going to do Vegas again mid 2019. But after that, depending on how it goes, we might think about moving it somewhere else.
Now, was that a big risk? Did you have to put a lot of money down to do the Vegas event? Was that a bit scary?
That was a huge risk. And that's kind of where all the money went. So, our last big conference in Chiang Mai, it had a good profit, but $10,000 of it had to go to the Vegas event as a non-refundable down payment. Another $10,000, the remaining $10,000 of it had to go secure the room for the next in Chiang Mai event. And even after, working, 4 months on the Vegas event and then another 4 months for the Chiang Mai event, we ended up having a net profit of $1,700 for our last event.
So back to your monthly income when you started working, basically. So that's good.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. I mean, I don't even know what that would be per hour worked, but it would probably be way less than minimum wage.
Yeah, I'm curious about. So what would you say? I mean, you run these two pretty big events. Like how? If you're going to guess, what would you say, how much time you work in a year on your events? Like how much actually hours would you say or days you spend working on these events?
I mean, it's really hard to say because a lot of things, are kind of just here and there. But I would say for the 3 months leading up to the event, it ends up being 20 hours a week.
Yeah.
I still have to run my other businesses, but at least half my time is, organizing the next event.
And do you have, apart from the volunteers, do you have any like VAs or full-time staff working on the events?
Yeah. So we've always had volunteers and, we still use a lot of volunteers for check-in.
And they get a free place and stuff.
Yeah. So they get a free ticket, to enter. We always have volunteer photographers. We normally try to hire our videographers because I know how much work it is to film and edit. So those people, we always pay for. We normally pay for one professional photographer that has a shoot list. And then we normally have a couple volunteer photographers where we give them artistic freedom and say, just enjoy the event and take a bunch of photos, but it's up to you. There's no, don't treat it like a job, enjoy the event. But as far as paid staff, in the beginning, I always had partners for the year. My first year, it was a girl named Katrin Folkeden, I believe that's her last name. She's from Austria, and it was my idea to do the conference. I put the money up for it. But she would be basically my co-organizer for the year, and she helped a lot. She got our first sponsor. She got Buffer. And that helped pay for the venue. And then the next 2 years, I used a guy named Cody. The second year, he was great. He worked super hard. He brought on a couple, great sponsors. It was fantastic. So the next year, I reached out to him and said, "Hey, let's do it again." That was amazing. And the third year, it went really south. It was really crazy where he started trying to take over the event. He started putting things under his name. I'm like, "Hey, just relax. And I think there was a lot happening in his life. I kind of just let it slide. But then I remember the day after the event ended, I kind of just casually mentioned to him hey, I'm so glad it's over. It became just a nightmare. And so luckily that ended. And last year I decided, I'm never partnering with someone again. I'm just going to hire someone.
It's funny. That's the funny thing about events is you have to be almost obsessive about detail and you can't, when I've worked with people who try to kind of come along to an event and have really good fun and enjoy it, I always kind of get a bit annoyed because unless you obsess about every little detail, it's almost like you can't enjoy your own party. And I don't think you enjoy your own event as you enjoy it, but you have to really be so on top of everything, and that's what makes people have a good experience, and if you don't, they don't have a good experience. I know, I think.
Yeah. Well, one of the funny things was one of my goals last year was to be able to finally eat the food at my own event.
Yeah.
Because I normally, you spend all these months planning the menus, but then you get so busy that you hardly get to eat.
It's true.
So last year I hired two girls, Steph and Kara, to be the event organizer to kind of take care of the, kind of day to day. And they were fantastic. They were really amazing. And it really paid off for them too. Part of the deal was, they offered to organize the event for a pretty small fee, but because they wanted to learn how to create the event, because they wanted to create their own events company.
Sure.
And it was, first, from my point of view, it was amazing having, two professionals take care of most of the things. And I was actually able just to stand around and during breaks and, enjoy the food and just talk to people and enjoy the event. And then it paid off for them because just a few days ago, they announced that their new event called Tokenomics, it's a blockchain event, ended up getting acquired by a blockchain incubator for an undisclosed amount, but I'm sure it was quite a bit of money.
That's very cool.
That event was basically, if you look at photos of it, it looked very similar to the Nomad Summit that they helped put on for me, because they were able to use the same venues, the same contacts, just from all the things that they learned from helping me with mine.
That's a great general lesson, I think, for people. Like, if you work with people who are on the open, you can give them something. Like, you could show them how to run an event, they could take it to the next level. That's the best kind of partnership, because they're really going to help you because they really want to learn from you, and because they're on the way up.
Yeah, definitely. And the only problem with the way the events are in Chiang Mai now is it seems like the Nomad Summit has paved the way of finding, new unique venues. And then after people see the events there, they're like, oh, this location is great. Let's use it for our event.
Yeah.
And like they all end up looking exactly the same. I remember looking at photos thinking it was the Nomad Summit, and I was like, oh no, this is an SEO event, or this is the blockchain event, because we're using the same photographers, we're using the same venues, using the same stages and layouts. So this year we're actually leveling up again, and we're moving into a bigger, nicer hotel called the Shangri-La.
Wow,
and just to kind of differentiate ourselves. Yeah.
Cool. So look, Johnny, that's amazing. Just a couple of quick questions. I'm just looking at your website. What did you actually build? Is it a WordPress site? It looks really cool. I love the video. You got looping at the top. What did you build this with?
On WordPress with Thrive themes.
Yeah.
And what it is one of my, I don't want to call it a co-organizer because she's more of the back-end organizer, but one of my, kind of like my right-hand gal for the year, Alexandria, she helped with the last event. She was actually an attendee of the Nomad Summit in Chiang Mai, I think last year, 2 years ago. And then this past Vegas event, she was one of my co-organizers, and then she's on board again. And she used to work for Thrive Themes, so she knows WordPress, front and back. So she's been super helpful.
Interesting, yeah. I've just, as a general thing, I've gone through so many different CMSs, and I've got a couple of WordPress sites. Some people just love it. It's a kind of love it or hate it with WordPress, isn't it? Some people just can't stand it. Some people just want everything on WordPress.
It's kind of a love-hate relationship where I want my site built on WordPress, but I don't want to be the one building it.
Yeah, that's definitely true. Hey, Johnny, a couple of things. You mentioned sponsors. Like how, obviously there's, the two ways you make money from an event are attendee tickets and sponsors. Have you grown that over the years? You've got quite a few sponsors now?
Yeah, it's been really, really good. I mean, it's kind of difficult with sponsors because you never really know what to charge, because obviously you want to charge enough so then you can you basically want to charge enough so you have exactly 3 sponsors or whatever the max amount of sponsors you want. For us, it's 3 because that's kind of the room that we want to have at our event and our banners. So the main sponsors can kind of get enough exposure. We have time to bring them on stage, things like that. But at the same time, you never want to leave money on the table because that they paid too little. You're gonna, you could have done more for the event. You could have had a better after party. You could have had, better food or better venues. So it's been kind of hit or miss, trying to figure out the pricing, because we want it to be win-win for everyone. We want to make sure they get maximum exposure and they get a good ROI. But at the same time, it is really difficult to calculate that because, most people aren't clicking the actual links we send in the email and social media post. What it is they see that sponsor over and over, especially because we start selling tickets, 4 months in advance.
Yep.
We film all the talks, so we put in, all the talks for free on YouTube. So I know that our sponsors that keep coming back every year, they know they're getting value from it eventually, even if it's, not like a direct link click.
Yeah, it's interesting. What I found with sponsors is the larger the company you deal with, the more they're not as focused on specific sales from the event. When I've dealt with really small companies, they want to get 3 sales from the event, because they, they've invested whatever, 1, 2, 3, whatever, $4,000. Bigger companies, they're looking for general exposure. It's interesting. As I've kind of gone up the food chain in terms of sponsors, it's a different dynamic. They're looking more for brand awareness and things like that.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, they're also thinking more of the long, bigger picture.
Yeah.
I think when you're a small company, I understand it's kind of hard, not to have a ROI within a month. When you're a big company, it's okay if you get the ROI in a year or 2.
Exactly. Cool. Hey, Johnny, final question. Your events, how do you think they've contributed to building your profile and getting you more well-known and getting you into other business opportunities?
Well, one funny thing is a lot of people don't know I'm the founder of the Nomad Summit.
Interesting.
People just think, a lot of people think I'm just the speaker at one, or I guess if they attend they find out there, or maybe they even sometimes assume I'm just the host. But even as the speaker, and I guess I can guarantee myself a speaking slot, because it's my conference. People just from that, people reached out saying, hey, I see that you're speaking at the summit. Can I get you on my podcast, or can I get you on this? And then actually, hosting the event, a lot of it is just being able to reach out to really successful people, asking them if they can come speak at the summit, or having them reach out to me, applying to speak and getting to know them, from that position.
Yeah, definitely. That's it's I guess it's like anything that puts you out there, like doing a podcast or doing an event. It's easy. People are always going to, even if they say no, they're still going to reply to you. Whereas if people are busy, and having an event means it's easier to get to know people. Definitely, I found that.
Yeah, definitely. And, also, allows me access to, the 400 people who come, they can get to know me in person, versus, just online, which is very different. I think that's kind of one of the big benefits of live events in person. People are really, really friendly. People are positive, optimistic. People who paid to go to an event are always going to be better caliber and eventually more successful than people who only go to free events or only hang out online.
It's true, and I think that's why the whole event space is booming right now, is because people are increasingly isolated. They've got their headphones on and their MacBook Pro, and they're just working away solo, and they want to meet people. They want an excuse to get together, and I think that's part of the reason why this whole space is booming so much.
Yeah, so 2 tips kind of on, that we didn't mention, but how I kind of build up the event as well is in between events. One thing I started doing was we started hosting a free weekly mini event. We call it the Nomad Coffee Club. And it's, we have a deal with a coffee shop where as long as people, order a drink, we can use the venue. And in the beginning, it was actually really hard to even convince them to let us do it, So I would just drive around on a Friday afternoon and look for empty coffee shops and say, hey, a bunch of us going to show up next Friday. Is that okay? And the first week we would not have a projector, not have a mic. We would just show up and order 40 cups of coffee and we would just take over the shop, and then we would come back the next week, then the next week. And usually by the third week, the coffee shop owner is like, hey, is there anything we can do to make your life easier? And we're like, yeah, it'd be nice if we had a microphone. And then the next week, we're like, well, it'd be nice if we had a projector. So we've now, basically built up multiple coffee shops in Chiang Mai that would normally be completely empty on a Friday. And now they're packed every day because
that's really cool.
People know the venue, people like the venue, and they come back Monday through Friday.
That's a great approach. And I've done similar things, and you want to know the only place that approach doesn't work is America. Like, America drives me nuts. Like, I've done so many, like most places, like, if you bring a bunch of people to a bar or a cafe, they're really pleased. Like in America, typically the bars are like, right, I'll call up and say, I'm doing a networking event. I'm going to bring 50 people. And they'll be like, right, I want $1,000 minimum spend. You got to give me $1,000. And I'm like, I'm bringing 50 people to your bar. Surely you should be just happy and give me a private room, and we're going to buy drinks and stuff. And they're like, no, $1,000. It seems to like every time in America, and I don't know why it's like that. It's strange, given it's the entrepreneurial country of the world.
I think part of it is, they think of it as a liability. They're like, okay, we need to guarantee more staff. We need to hire these people. And what if you guys don't show up? While I think the way around it is to find a non-corporate place, somewhere like a mom and pop owner.
Yeah.
That's going to be empty anyways, and literally just show up the first week and just be like, what, I'll give you a heads up. Just like, hey, just let there's going to be 20 plus of us. And then don't wait for an answer. Just show up.
Yeah, exactly. Look, Johnny, it's a real privilege to talk. People should check out nomadsummit.com, I think is the website, if I'm right. Yeah, nomadsummit.com. It's coming up January the 18th to the 21st in Chiang Mai. I would definitely recommend, if you're a digital nomad or even interested in this lifestyle, to go and check it out. I guess you've got people flying in from other countries now, is that right?
Oh, man, from like 50 countries. I mean,
wow.
It's crazy. Americans, Canadians, Australians. I mean, if you guys don't know what a digital nomad is, it's basically people who work online, entrepreneurs, that work from coffee shops or your laptop. I'm sure most of your listeners, even if you guys are event organizers, you can probably do most of what you do online. So it's a good event to come out to learn how to grow your online business, how to market better, and meet other people who do the same thing.
Perfect. Great stuff, Johnny. Anything else you want to mention or promote? Any other links or anything?
Yeah, definitely. If you guys like interviews with successful entrepreneurs, especially people who work online, who can work from a laptop, check out my podcast. It's called Travel Like a Boss Podcast. And on a side note, that's also been a great way to kind of pre-vet potential speakers to see if they're willing to be transparent, willing to share a lot of value. If they can do that well, then they'll probably make a good speaker.
That's a great tip. Johnny, real pleasure. Thank you very much, and all the best with the conference.
Yeah, thanks so much. Hopefully I'll see you sometime in the future.
Definitely.
Do you want to sell more tickets to your amazing events? EventsFrame event ticketing has been built to minimize the amount of time it takes to buy a ticket. Result? You sell more tickets. Check out eventsframe.com